Sorry to disappoint you. So what was your expectation? Nah, I'm just an everyday dude. Oh, you expected perfection? This is what Christianity is supposed to be like. I make mistakes. Like lots of mistakes. I'm just trying to do the best that I can do. I guess I'm just imperfectly human. Hey, welcome back. I guess that's a welcome back for you, a welcome back for me. I know I've been missing for a while, but we will get back into that. So this is the Imperfectly Human podcast. I am your host, Mr. Daley. Haven't said that in a while, but yeah, I'm back. I'm back. I'm looking forward to this. I want to wish everyone a very prosperous 2024. Very happy new year. Hope you've got some big plans. You've got some milestones you want to hit. You know, I'm not going to say goals. I'm going to say milestones, because we don't stop. We just keep growing, we keep pushing, and we keep reaching for more. For me personally, it's about seeing what my journey is like, what I can achieve, even when I have some setbacks and my confidence is knocked or whatever. I get up and I keep going to see what I can achieve. So today's going to be an interesting one. We're going to dive into it. Basically, this episode is called Welcome Back. It's a discussion on where I've been, what I've been up to, and what this show is now about. So I look forward to sharing that with you. I look forward to getting into that. We've got a new format, we've got a new layout, some consistency going forward. So yeah, it's going to be real good. So let's go. Before we dive into things, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review for the podcast. It really helps a long way in helping the podcast grow. As you know, right now, I am the only member of this production team. I've had to stop the YouTube side because I just can't sustain it on my own. So being able to grow would allow us to reintroduce the YouTube side of the podcast. So that can only happen if we get the subscribers, if we get the reviews and the feedback, and we get the recognition by the bigger platforms. So please, if you enjoy the content, share it and subscribe to the podcast. So we are back. I am back. And let's dive straight into this. So today I said we're going to be focusing on, I guess, a couple of things. So I'm going to talk to you about why I took a break from podcasting, where I've been for the last 2 years, and then what this show is now about. So for those of you who have been subscribed for a while, who've been following the journey for a while, season 1 was myself and Dr. Terence Johnson, and we were diving into loads of biblical topics. Really enjoyed it, really good, and that will feed into my reason for taking a break from podcasting. Season 2, I came back by myself, and it became a podcast about my entrepreneurial journey as a Christian. And I shared tips. I started to do interview series and just different things that related to that journey of an entrepreneur and trying to put that Christian vibe on it and show how I have to deal with certain challenges as a Christian. So that concept is still, I guess it's still relevant, but again, it's part of the reason I took a break. And so we're now in season 3. And as I said, the last point that I'm going to get to is what this show is now about. So why did I take the break? So if I'm honest, the first and probably the most important reason I took the break was mental fatigue. I'd got to a point where it felt like a struggle every week to prepare and record the podcast. I was struggling for what I wanted to talk about. I was struggling for just a number of reasons, but mentally I wasn't there. I wasn't connecting with the podcast anymore. And it meant that I felt like I wasn't giving you my authentic self. So I could come in, I could switch it on, I could be in the moment, live, vibrant, all that good stuff. I could do all of that once the microphone came on. That's not that hard. But for me, podcasting involves giving you some well-curated content. And that means I've sat aside and I've thought about what I'm doing, and I've put the work in to actually create this content and share my honest opinions with you. Whereas I felt what I was doing at that point was very spontaneous, and spontaneous is cool. For those of you who listened to the Daley Perspective while that ran, it was very spontaneous. I used to jump on stereo with a bunch of random people and just talk about anything. So anything could happen on that podcast. And that was actually really fun. I really enjoyed that. It was wild. I had people coming on and I used to say, look, this is, I'm trying to inject the Christianity and the honesty, but for listeners, you've got to be aware that there's going to be some cursing. I can't control what people come on and say, but I want to give you the real. And I loved it, because it pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot of the times, because I really, truly had no control over what people came on and did. But when it came to Imperfectly Human was the structured show. It was the one that had to have the boundaries. It was the one that had to have the plan. It was the one that had to have its stuff in order. And, I'm looking at the sidelines and I'm looking on the show, and the show is looking at me like, hey, yo, what we doing? And I'm there looking back at the show like, I don't know what we doing. What we doing? That was not a good place to be in. And that was what the mental fatigue was. It was just, I had no idea what I wanted to do anymore. And I guess it's going to tie into another point. But I'm a creative guy. I don't struggle to come up with ideas. I don't struggle to come up with concepts. But you get to a point where there is so much pulling on you that creating can sometimes be a challenge. And then put that disconnect into it, and that fatigue sets in really quickly, because you haven't got that. What's the word I'm looking for? You haven't. It's not that the passion isn't there. The passion is still there, but you haven't got that that drive to get up and just do it. You're still passionate about it. The passion didn't go. But every time feels like a chore. And that was the problem. That's when I knew, okay, we're hitting a wall. We're tired. We're fatigued. What's going on? We need to change something up. We need to switch this up. So that was point one. Second part of it was all the way back to the end of season 1. I was getting ready for season 2. Reached out to Dr. Johnson. I was like, yo, season 2, what we doing? You ready to come back? Let's do this. We just had a break. I'm pumped. Let's get this. And it was like, I've been meaning to talk to you, but I need to focus on my own thing. And it was like, boom, crumble. It was like slamming into a brick wall and everything just falling apart. That's how I felt, because suddenly I had this plan in my head of what the show was going to be like. And it wasn't going to be like that anymore. And I guess the connection, the rapport, the chemistry that I felt we'd built up on the show suddenly just disappeared. It was gone like that in an instant. Poof. No more co-host. It was me on my own, and I had to figure it out. And then I tried to reach out to a few people that I knew, and I was like, "Hey, do you wanna do this podcast with me? It would be good. I think you'd enjoy it. I think we could have some good chemistry." And it was like, shut down, palm in the face, pie in the face, shut down. Everywhere I turned felt like no one was on it with me. So I felt this. I guess that's the abandonment that I felt. So I felt abandoned by my co-host. And then, it's not really, the second part wasn't abandonment. There was the abandonment from my co-host, and then there was the rejection from all the potential co-hosts that I approached. And all of a sudden, this plan that I had in my head for season 2 went out the window. And I had to think on the fly and come up with a new idea for season 2. Because I had already been saying, season 2's coming back. And I wasn't going to delay it. Now, you would think that I had learned from mistakes that I'd made in the past when I used to run an independent label, Sold Out Edutainment. The release of my solo album, Return of the Sleeping Giant, available on Spotify. You can go and get it from there. But yeah, when I was working on release of the Return of the Sleeping Giant, I had recorded, I think, about 60-70% of the album. Really happy with the content. And then I got on social media, got on platforms, did interviews, and I was telling people, hey, Return of the Sleeping Giant is going to drop this date. This is when the album's coming out. It's coming out this date. We're going to be doing it. We're doing big things. And I was going off. And then, because I was recording on a Windows machine at the time. Anyone that knows Windows from back in the 90s, 2000s, Windows machines then, I don't even know, because I don't use Windows anymore. But Windows machines used to suffer the blue screen of death. And I went to the studio one day, hooked everything up, and blue screen of death. Lost everything. All the recorded tracks, all the audio, everything was gone. No backups. And I'm like, it's October and the release date is November. What am I going to do? So I soldiered on and re-recorded the album. And if I'm honest, the second cuts of those songs were worse than the first cuts because they were rushed. It didn't have that. It didn't have that magic. It didn't have that natural feel. Because when I was recording them the first time, I had that space to, I would do a take of a verse and I'd be like, nah, I don't like that. I don't like the way I said that word. I don't like the way that bar fits with that one. So I would go back and I would record again rather than doing what we do, what's in the industry is called punching in. Rather than punching in and picking up from where the verse ended, or where I dropped off in the verse and trying to match the pitch, trying to match everything. The diction had to be the same. Everything had to be the same when you punch in. You have to make it seem like a seamless joint. And I'd just be like, and to be fair, it's an art form in itself to be able to punch in and for it not to be recognizable that you've punched in. But I would just re-record. I would re-record the whole bar. The whole verse, and get the 16 right, how I wanted it to sound. Do it in one take so it flowed consistently, sounded the same. I had the luxury to do that. But when I was doing it the second time, I had to punch in. And I could tell, maybe some people listening, I think professionals listening to it would be able to tell that I punched in. I definitely could tell that I punched in certain places. And it just didn't have the same feel. You could feel that. I definitely could feel that it was rushed. I just did not like the end product. And I vowed that I would never sort of put a date out there and say, hey, the show's coming back, or the album is coming out, or whatever, on this date, because it meant that I put this undue pressure on myself that I had to hit this ridiculous target date that I've set. It's not like the industry has set the date on me and people are waiting on the date. I put the date out there. So I've put this ridiculous target out there and just made it difficult for myself. So I vowed never to make that mistake. And here I was again with the podcast in the position where I'd been talking about coming back and saying, get ready, myself and Dr. Johnson are coming back, we're doing this, we're doing that. And then I realized, hey, Dr. Johnson ain't coming back, dog. So I was just like, it was just me. It was just me on my own. And here I was. What am I going to do? So that feeling of abandonment played in, leading me to come up with an idea pretty quick. And it wasn't the idea that if I had sat back and really thought about what I wanted the podcast to be on my own, what season 2 did not fit in with what the podcast. I mean, it doesn't even fit. It didn't even fit in with the title. I mean, Imperfectly Human. What did that have to do with my entrepreneurial journey? You know, I just kind of forced it and blagged it and kind of said, yeah, this is that. It didn't fit. And that became evident throughout the season as I struggled to put content out. And by the end of it, I felt lost. So, third point. By the end of it, I was completely lost. I didn't know what I was doing. I no longer had a desire to record the podcast because I couldn't find my identity in that podcast anymore. It didn't reflect who I was. It didn't reflect my vision of what I wanted Imperfectly Human to be. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'd actually planned to do something like 21, 22 episodes for season 2. And I checked out at 19 because I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Okay, I'm not doing it. And that was it. I bowed out and I expected to take a few months break. But that wasn't the case. So flowing on into where have I been for the last 2 years? I've been right here. I'm in the same spot, still living in the same spot. I hadn't intended to be living in the same spot, but that's part of the journey. But yeah, over the last 2 years, I've still been in the same industry. Had I dreamed to change industry? Of course I had. I had dreamed that I would have got this podcast to a point where I could transition to a full-time career in podcasting. That hasn't happened, and that's fine. it's just because I didn't hit that milestone, because it wasn't a goal, it was a milestone that I was hoping for. I've just had to move the milestone out. Why didn't I hit it? Well, I took a 2-year break. So, hey, hell, that's what happens. It's all about readjusting, repositioning yourself, picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and keep moving. So, over the 2 years, what have I been doing? I've been spending time with my family. I'd got to a point in life where I was, I think, very focused on what I was doing and not enough focus on what they needed. That's not to say that I wasn't fulfilling my role as a husband and a father. I take that stuff so seriously. Those are two hats that I wear proudly, and nothing comes before those hats. Husband and father. Those are super important responsibilities to me. But when I say that I hadn't really been concentrating on what they needed as much as I should have, I was always busy with work, jumping straight off work into the podcast, and I would have conversations with them. I would help with homework in between. I would try and have some conversation with my wife and all of that stuff. But I was literally moving from one thing to another, and then the day was done, and then the kids will have activities all weekend, and then the week starts again, and the cycle repeats. So whilst I was there and I was present doing the things that needed to be done. And that's not the same as spending time. For me, spending time means giving of myself with zero distractions. Being able to sit down and do what they want to do rather than, doing what they want to do when they want to do it, how they want to do it, rather than doing what they want to do when it fits with my timetable and within the available space that I've allotted them within my schedule. Two very different things. Both can sound the same. You're still getting the output, but in the second iteration, I'm the one that's satisfied because it fits in with what I want. And sometimes when you're wearing those hats, you have to appreciate that it's not going to fit in with your schedule. But that's the beauty of being a husband and being a father, being able to sacrifice. Learning to be a servant leader in your home as a husband and a father is so important. And that's what I've been working on for the last 2 years, being a servant leader. I'm still being the provider. I'm still being the spiritual head of my home. I'm still praying for my family. I'm still encouraging them and doing all of that. But I'm serving them more. I'm putting aside my needs to serve them more. And then I guess over the 2 years, or the most recent part of it is a new addition to the family. So that's made that servitude even more important, because now I have a young man that I'm going to have to help develop into a man. I'm going to have to help him understand what manhood is and what being a man really means from a biblical context in this modern world, which is back to the meaning of why, or the reason I created Imperfectly Human. So, it's been a crazy roller coaster for 2 years, but a lot of it has been focusing on spending that time, that's learning how to be a servant leader in my home. The other part was rediscovering myself. As I said, season 2 did not really connect with who I wanted to be on, or no, that's wrong. That's not the right way to phrase it. Season 2 did not align my vision for Imperfectly Human, it did not align with my vision for Imperfectly Human. And my vision for Imperfectly Human involved was me giving myself to you as the audience and being the open book that I like to be and being super transparent. And it wasn't that. It was very structured. It was actually more like marketing content, because there was always a call to action to get to engage with me from a business perspective and blah, 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 blah. It wasn't really what I wanted it to be. And I think it sucked the magic out of it. So, yeah, I had to go back to the drawing board and think about, hey, who am I in this moment? Who I am as a person, has that fundamentally changed? And it hadn't. I knew it hadn't. But I had to reconnect with who I was. I had to focus on who I was created to be and the gifts that I've been given, and not the hats that I wear. And again, if you go back to season 1, you'll hear myself and Dr. Johnson talk about that. About understanding your purpose, understanding your self-identity, and being able to separate the hats you wear from who you are. I also spent some time rediscovering friendships. So one of the important things in life is being able to be a good friend to people. And sometimes being a good friend to people is being able to forgive, being able to, again, like serving your family, serve your friends with no expectations on them. So I had to learn to do that again. Make sure that in my friendships, I was being transparent, I was being honest, I was giving of myself. I wasn't holding grudges. I had no resentment. And that was good. That was a good experience, going back to do that and make sure that I was being genuine in who I was in friendship. And lastly, over the last 2 years, I've been dealing with drama. And I guess that's life, isn't it? Life throws drama at us 24/7. There have been numerous failed attempts to sell our home and move because the market has changed so much. And did I make the right choice when I moved here? I don't think so. I don't believe I made the right choice. I don't believe we as a family made the right choice. In the short term, it made sense, but we didn't really examine the area as much as we should have. And was it a good fit for our family? No, it wasn't. So it's been a struggle living here, but I don't believe things happen by accident. I believe there is a reason that God allowed us to move here. So I'm experiencing, I feel like this is, and you're probably going to hear me talk about this quite a lot this time because I'm going to draw the parallels. But I feel like the Israelites in the wilderness, I feel like at the moment in this house, this is our wilderness. Not to say that we won't, we're not going to be like the Israelites and not see the promised land. That's a spoiler for what I'm going to talk about later. But I believe that we will see our promised land, but we have to go through our journey in the wilderness. And we have to remind ourselves, and in this moment and in this time, we have to teach our children how to be wholly dependent on God and how to trust in God with everything, even when it doesn't seem to make sense, even when your plans aren't coming to pass. and teaching them that, hey, we can make our own plans, but we must commit these plans to God, because ultimately he holds our destiny in the palms of his hands, and he knows our beginning and our end. He knew our end before our beginning, and he knew the decisions that we would make and the journey that we would take. So learning to trust and to say, hey, God, I hand this back to you, and I ask you to guide me and to show me the right way and the right decisions to make. And even if I take the wrong turn, help me to find my way back onto the right path. Sometimes that journey through the wilderness will take longer than it should. It depends on your pride. It depends on how stubborn you are. It depends on how obedient you are. The Bible does say obedience is better than sacrifice. And I'm learning that because sometimes you feel like you're being told to do something and you don't do it, and you think, I'm going to do it this way. That can't be. God wouldn't tell me to do that. But when you read the scriptures and look, I'm not talking about an audible voice telling me. As Christians, some people might still hear an audible voice. I have never heard an audible voice, the audible voice of God. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm just saying it's never happened with me. For me, when I hear from God, I hear from God through the scripture. I hear from God through people. I might be praying about something and someone comes and says something about that thing and confirms what I've been praying about. So I'm very conscious to listen to the people around me that I believe God has placed around me. I'm not talking about just listening to Tim off the street. I'm talking about listen to the godly people that God has put around you, because through those people, he will confirm his will for you. Through his word, he will confirm his will for you. So it kind of reiterates that importance of digging into the scripture and understanding the scripture and doing all of that. Anyway, I digress. I was talking about the drama. But like I said, I believe we're in a wilderness period. We're making our journey through the wilderness and we're learning. And we will come out of the wilderness. But right now, I'm allowing the journey to refine me and to refine my family and to help me to teach my children to trust in God. That's the journey we're going on. The drama, man, it's not something I can get into on this. But yeah, let's just say the drama was dramaing. I don't even know if that's a phrase. I don't even know if that's a thing. But the drama had its own drama. Put it this way, I had to, this stuff had been building up for years. But it was like, and I felt like this was God bringing certain chapters of my life to a close. But in the same way that, imagine running into a wall. A wall is like a bookend. This was a bookend to a certain chapter of my life. And sometimes the end of something can be painful. And I believe the drama that I went through was related to that. There was a lot of legal drama with previous businesses and stuff like that. And yeah, it wasn't fun. It wasn't pretty. It cost me. Emotionally, it cost me financially, it cost me in terms of my peace at a certain point, and I had to rediscover my peace and find my peace in God and learn, to say, so shall it be. And what I mean by that is to look at a situation and say, if this is your will, God, then so shall it be. I hand it back to you. And I had to allow God to work through every situation. The painful ones were trying to move and having that constantly fall through. But I truly believe it's because we weren't supposed to move yet. And when we are supposed to move, when we are supposed to leave the wilderness, it will happen. I think if we had moved, we would have left the wilderness prematurely, and we wouldn't have learned the lessons that we need to learn to succeed when we enter our promised land. And that's all I'm going to say on that. So, what is the show about now? The show now is about me. It's me giving, as I said, it's about me giving you my honest opinion. It's about me being transparent. I'm going to do my best without disrespecting my family or disrespecting my wife or my loved ones. With the stories that I share and things like that, I will be as honest and as transparent as I can, but with making sure I maintain respect for them. So if I can't talk about something, I can't talk about it point blank. But I will be as transparent as possible, because that's just who I am. And everything about me really is about helping others. So when I said the show had moved away, I was choking there for a second, forgive me. When I said the show had moved away from what the vision I had for Imperfectly Human, what I meant was that I always saw Imperfectly Human as an extension of myself, something that allowed me to help others. I believe my purpose in this world is to help others. No other way. So everything I do must center back to that. I was created to help others. I was created to be a catalyst for others. I was created to be a facilitator for others. And that's it, point blank. So Imperfectly Human has to do that. It has to help others. And that's why I said, again, season 2 was about helping myself. And that's why it felt so disconnected with my vision. Season 3, I'm going to share my ups and downs in life, in business, in friendship. I'm going to give you the real. So I will also be giving you, so whilst I say I'm going to talk about business, it's not going to be like, and my tip for today. I'm not doing none of that stuff anymore. No, forget that. I don't need to teach you tools and techniques, but I will be talking about what I'm doing. So I have repurposed my business. I focus now on coaching because, again, remember what I said just now. I understand that my purpose is to help others. So my focus now is to move my business from what I was doing in the consulting space purely into coaching others who want to enter that consulting space, especially in the area of business analysis. And I will expand my coaching into other areas as they become more apparent to me. Right now, this is the one that I know that I can do confidently. That's not to say that there aren't other areas I can coach in, but this is the one that stands out to me. So I'm going to focus on that. So that's what I do. So I will talk about it. I will talk about my ups and downs. Right now, the biggest up was understanding what I should be focusing on in business. The down is what it always is, business development. Business development is the bane of my life. I am not great at it. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, I will always be transparent. I am not great at the business development side, especially with an introverted personality. And you have to go out and you have to do networking and all of that stuff. I am not the greatest in that space. So that is the biggest challenge. That is the biggest down, because right now, because I am positioning something new, I need to do a lot of business development. So I'm trying to learn how to do it in a way that works for me and works with my personality type. But that's the biggest down right now. And I'm sure it's going to have some funny moments, some good moments, some highs and lows, and we will talk about them as they happen, but they're not the focus of the show. What else? I'm going to be talking about life as a Christian and trying to be a better Christian. Now, this is something that I hope that a lot of my audience can resonate with. I don't know. The majority of my audience may not be Christians. They may be Christians. They may not be. You know what I mean? But if you are a person of faith, you will understand that in this world that we live in, it is extremely challenging to live a Christian life. And what I mean by that is not that you do not desire to live a Christian life. You are surrounded by things that will challenge your desire to live a Christian life. You are surrounded by things that will try to tempt you to compromise on your desire to live the best Christian life that you can. And I'm going to talk about these things because there are challenges as a husband, there are challenges as a father, there are challenges just as a member of society. And a lot of that comes down to your dedication to studying scripture, studying the word, and also applying the scriptures to your life. The more you get into that habit, the more you focus on it, the more you dig into it, the more you make it, part of your routine, I think the easier it becomes. But no word of a lie, it is not an easy thing to do. It is not an easy feat to achieve. So yeah, I'm going to definitely share about that. Leading on from that, I expect this show to also be very transparent about my failings. Like I said, this show is called Imperfectly Human, and that is what I want to show. I want to show the humanity. I want to show the human side. I want to make sure that you see that I am not this robot that tries to pretend to be perfect, because I am far from it. So we're definitely going to talk about my failings and my challenges and where I need to step it up and learn to be better. Lastly, it's just going to be about keeping it real and having fun. I'm going to try to have some guests on the show. I think whenever we have guests on the show, it is fun. But I definitely want the guests to be people that think like me. Oh, no, that's not fair. I want it to be people that I connect with, people that I know that I can have a humorous but real conversation with. I don't want dry conversations. I want people that can laugh whilst talking about real serious stuff. Because sometimes, when talking about serious things requires a little bit of laughter, a little bit of humor. That's just the way I see it. But we're definitely going to keep it real, and we're definitely going to be having fun. And that's what the show is about. That is what we are going to be doing. So let me lay it out to you, because as I mentioned, there is a new structure, a new format for Imperfectly Human. So we've got segments, y'all. We have got segments now. So we will always open with our intro. Our intro is called Stumbling Out the Gate. So when you're looking through those chapters or, those section markers for the podcast, if you want to jump around, don't jump around the podcast. Don't skip to the end. Don't skip segments. Listen to the whole thing. But if you must use those markers, segment 1, out the gate, stumbling out the gate. This is our intro. This is where we're going to set things up for what's happening on the show. Then we're going to have the main content area, and main content will be rotating segments. Okay, so like I said, I want to keep it interesting. So we will always have. Sorry, not we will always. We will always have the main segment. Of course, we will always have the main segment. But there are a few things that fall into it. Faith and Hustle. Faith and the Hustle is a segment that will talk about ups and downs in business with that Christian values. Daddy Dilemmas. I'm going to talk to you about parenting stories. And I got some parenting stories. We're going to talk about Friendly Fire. So Friendly Fire is an open conversation about friendships, navigating conflicts, building stronger bonds. I'm going to talk about my friendships because, hey, I've got some good friendships, but these friendships have also been tested. And I might, do you know what? I might actually see if I can get some of my friends on to come and talk about whenever I'm doing a segment on Friendly Fire. I might have my friends as a guest. And Daley Perspective. I told you we're going to talk about Daley Perspective. So the Daley Perspective has been incorporated into Imperfectly Human. It is now a segment within Imperfectly Human. Daley Perspective was always envisioned as something that talked about real life issues and what's going on in the world and brought a Christian perspective to them. Whilst the name, some people made the assumption that daily meant that it was going to happen every day, but that wasn't a play on the words. Daley just meant my name, Mr. Daley. Daley Perspective, Mr. Daley's Perspective, Daley Perspective. So it's now going to be a core part of this show. We will always have the Daley Perspective segment that talks about what's going on in the world and discussing some social issues and allowing me to share my personal stance. And lastly, Soul Searching is another core segment that we will have that allows me to share some stuff that I'm reflecting on from the Bible and as part of my spiritual journey. And wrapping things up, the outro, which I'm calling, it's the last segment. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how we're doing this. Major takeaways from a takeaway message, whatever it may be. But it's that last segment that we will use to calm ourselves down before we re-enter the real world. I can't let you leave the imperfectly human world all hyped up and go back into the real world. You might be liable to smack someone, and I don't want to be I don't want to be responsible for you smacking nobody. So we're going to try to bring you back down to earth on that with an imperfect wrap up. But yeah, so I'm going to hopefully, if we can, I'd love to do some listener Q&As. Like I said, we're going to have some interviews. We'll call them imperfect interviews. And hopefully, we will try and do some community spotlights and share about some inspiring stories as well. So that's the new layout for the show. I'm excited. And I can't wait to get into it. But anyway, that wraps up what I kind of wanted to talk about here. And we are going to jump into, drum roll please, Daley Perspective. So, on this installment of the Daley Perspective, I wanted to talk about a subject that's commonplace in the news today, war. We've got the ongoing conflicts in Russia and the Ukraine, and the ongoing conflict in Israel and Palestine, or in Gaza. And when this thing kicked off, I like most Christians, was like, oh, well, Israel are justified to take action. And then I was like, and if they seek to take Gaza, that's their biblical right, because God promised the land of Canaan to them. And I started to, I went on that argument. Then my daughter my daughter challenged me. Let's just be honest about it. My daughter challenged me, and she was like, Dad, the onslaught of Israel on Gaza is disproportionate in terms of the action they're taking. And just to put that into context, I did a quick search today, and just based on information from Al Jazeera, now obviously this could be this. I'm not saying that this is exact or spot on, but the estimate is that 23,357 people, approximately, have been killed in Gaza, and more than 59,410 wounded based on the Israeli attacks. And this is since October 7th. The revised death toll in Israel from the October 7th attack stands at 1,139 people. Still a lot. Now, on both sides, my issue... slow down. So my daughter challenged me and she said, look, Dad, I get it. They're angry. They are going to want to take action, like any nation would. But is it right that they are just killing people indiscriminately? And before, initially, I kind of stood. I was just like, well, it's war. I was like, it's war. They're going to be, they are going to be attacking. And I kind of looked at it from a very ignorant perspective, I think. I think I hid behind this view that it was Israel's right to take the land, settle in the land, and then defend the land from anyone that sought to take the land from them. And they were justified in retaliating in whichever way they saw fit. That was my initial stance. And I heard sermons that people were kind of saying that, well, if you're a Christian, you should be behind Israel. And again, at that time, it made me feel justified in my view. But then I'm a reflector. Everything about me is about reflection. I will always reflect on on my position. I will always go back and reconsider what the stance that I had and question it. So when I questioned this, and I didn't just blindly question it, I looked, I considered my standpoint and wanted to critically argue my standpoint. But the first thing that stood out for me was, I've told you the numbers, just the disproportionate just level of it's the indiscriminate killing. That's how I'm going to describe it. I've heard so many things that and so many views that have said Israel, in terms of defense, the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, have the best intelligence in the world. Israeli defense is second to none. The fact that the attack happened baffles a lot of security experts, number one. Number two, the response. The IDF has such good intelligence and are so coordinated that there is no way that they should be killing so many innocent civilians in their response. I mean, 23,357 lives lost. And this is what I always struggle with war. War, at the agendas of people take front and center, in my opinion. Let me just put it this way: you have, and people, and this is me. This may be me oversimplifying it. So you may want to cancel me for this. I guess that's your opinion. You cancel me if you want, but predominantly, the people who cause these things tend to be political leaders. Groups of individuals that have views that sometimes, a lot of the times, do not reflect the views of the people. And they will use media and they will use whatever to drive their agenda and to make people believe a certain thing. But they have this intention, this agenda that they are pushing. And wars break out. Now, so, we'll say that war is inevitable. And you can say, let's argue that war is inevitable. But in my view, in war is fought between armies, not civilians. Not armies going in and killing innocent civilians. And this is where I started to struggle. That we have such advanced technology in this world right now. Are you telling me that you are unable to limit the human casualties, the innocent human casualties, and keep that at a bare minimum, whilst taking out your military targets? If you felt that you couldn't use an aerial offensive to take down military targets without mitigating the risk of innocent human casualties, then you shouldn't be using airstrikes or an aerial assault. Just my view. You have sufficient information, then it should be a ground offensive. That's just the way I feel about it. And I started to struggle with justifying this because it just felt like slaughter. Hey, they've done this. We are going to go back in and we are going to slaughter everyone in Gaza. That's how it started to look to me. So I thought, okay, let me. If I'm going to argue this from a biblical perspective, let me look back, and let me just be clear: I am by no means justifying what Hamas did in Israel. Flat out wrong. They went and they killed innocent people. If you have political grievances and I just can't stand the fact that people use innocent people as shields or pawns in their political games. At the end of the day, innocent people lost their lives in Israel. Innocent people are losing their lives in Gaza. And for that, I cannot stand for either. That's just my view. That is where I stand right now. I do not agree with the death of innocent people. So with that said, I thought, let me look at this. If I'm going to, as a Christian, if I'm going to try and stand on what I felt was right from a Christian perspective, let me look at this. And I've said there are people that were asserting that as Christians we should be on the side of Israel because they are God's chosen people, and he has said in Genesis to Abraham that he gives the land, that he has given him the land of Canaan. I did some research. What is the land of? How does modern Israel look, or how does modern Israel compare to the biblical land of Canaan? And there is significant overlap. The biblical land of Canaan is much bigger than modern day Israel is today. It covers the core of both regions, covers most of present day Israel, but also covers the Palestinian territories. So it says the core region encompasses areas like Galilee, Judea, and Samaria. The challenges, the boundaries of the land of Canaan are quite ambiguous. And it says it could refer to all of present day Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, parts of Jordan, southern Syria, and even Lebanon. Whereas modern day Israel today has more defined borders. We know that because that's just the way the world works now. Now, I would argue then that if we're saying God gave the people of Israel the land of Canaan, why does Israel then have beef with Jordan and parts of Syria and Lebanon? Is that where this is going? And if it is, how does that differ from? Are they trying to exert their biblical or their right based on religious texts that the land belongs to them, and therefore will they be going after these other areas? I don't know. But if we are, as Christians, are saying that is their right to do that, are we saying that they have a right to go after these other lands as well? So that was one thing that I started to think about. Then I'm doing a Bible plan that's reading the Bible in a year, and as part of that plan, I've been reading Numbers. And I'd like to just focus on Numbers 14. Numbers 14. In Numbers 14, God tells the people of Israel that they are no longer, that the people that were in the wilderness will not see. So I think it was anyone above the age of 20 that was in the wilderness at the time would not see the promised land, because they held him in contempt and they rejected him as God. And he said that that none of them would enter the promised land, they would not see the land of Canaan, and that they would die in the wilderness. Meaning that their rejection of him as God excluded them from the right to inhabit the promised land. It says that the people defiantly pushed on into the land of Canaan, and the Amalekites and the Canaanites attacked and chased them back, drove them out. Why? Because God was not with them, because he had, as they rejected him, he rejected them. They were that portion of people were no longer defined as his people, and therefore no longer earned the right, or had the right to inhabit the land of Canaan. So, let's pause there. Come back to modern day. Is Israel today God's chosen people? Well, as Christians, we argue that God's chosen people are those who accept Christ as the Messiah. Let me be very careful there. That doesn't mean that the Jewish people and the Israelites are not God's people. Technically, anyone that descended from the 12 tribes of Israel are still God's special people. But are they those that qualify? I think that's a better statement. Do they qualify to live in the land? Now, as Christians, Jesus Christ is the foundation of our faith. We recognize Jesus Christ as the Messiah. I would argue that in order to qualify, you must accept that Jesus is the Messiah. And I would argue that, as it says, so in Luke 10:16, Jesus says that those who reject me reject the one who sent me. I'm paraphrasing, but he says, those who reject me reject the one who sent me. Now, if we were to argue this point, it would mean that by rejecting Jesus, which Judaism does, it says that they are still waiting for the Messiah. Therefore, those who practice Judaism have not accepted Christ as the Messiah, have rejected Jesus as the Messiah, and therefore, as Luke 10:16 says, they have rejected him and therefore rejected the one who sent them. So they've rejected God. Now, if we go back to Numbers 14, those who have rejected God have been rejected by God and therefore do not qualify to live in the land, and he will not be with them when they attempt to possess the land. So are we seeing, is what we are seeing evidence of people who have not accepted Jesus as the Messiah and who have been rejected by God, facing the conflict that they are expected to face when they try to possess land that they are not entitled to, based on their rejection of God. I hope that makes sense. Why do I say this? We argue that Jesus is the same today. We say Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. Lost my train of thought for a second. Forgive me. We say Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And his decisions stand through time. And therefore, if he, in that position, Numbers 14 says, hey, Israelites, you are no longer qualified because you have rejected me. Does that not stand today to say that those who have rejected him today also do not qualify to enter and possess the land? So, does that argument, my perspective, does that argument stand? Are they the argument Christians are given that Israel are justified in what they are doing? I'm struggling to see that. I welcome anyone to present another argument to me and debate that with me, because I'm open to learning, I'm open to discussion, I'm open to debate. This is just, as I said, this is Daley Perspective. This is my perspective. Is there a right side and a wrong side to this war? Of course. For me, there is a right side and a wrong side. There is a right way to fight a war. And that does not involve killing innocent people. Is Israel justified in how it is conducting itself? Do I believe they are fighting a fair war? Of course not. I can care less for the political motivations of this war. And I'm struggling. Where I am struggling is the human casualties, the loss of life, the unjustified loss of life. That is where I'm struggling. I'm going to leave this topic there because I think there are going to be so many conflicting opinions, but this is my opinion, this is my perspective, this is my view. At the moment, from what I can see, I do not feel that the loss of life is justified. There is nothing that justifies that loss of life. And Israel, even if they wanted to, as they say, strike out Hamas from the world or whatever, do it without taking out innocent human beings, children, families that just want to live their lives. Just my opinion. People will disagree, but hey, that is just my opinion. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. So, I call this segment Soul Searching. As I mentioned, I've been reading, I'm doing the Bible in a Year plan. And I've been reading Numbers is where I'm at. I'm at Numbers. Obviously, in the last segment, I mentioned that. But there was a point in Numbers that I found mad interesting. And it was, so in this section, what I'm talking about is there are things sometimes that I come across in the Bible that make me ask, why, God? Why? I don't get it. Why? And there's this section in Numbers 5, 11 to 31. And it's talking about marital faithfulness. And just for context, I will read it. So it says, and forgive me, because sometimes I hate reading out loud, but hey ho, we're going to do this. It's a podcast. Protecting marital faithfulness. And the Lord said to Moses, give the following instruction to the people of Israel. Suppose a man's wife goes astray and she is unfaithful to her husband and has sex with another man, but neither her husband nor anyone knows about it. She has defiled herself, even though there was no witness and she was not caught in the act. If her husband becomes jealous and is suspicious of his wife and needs to know whether or not she has defiled herself, the husband must bring his wife to the priest. He must also bring an offering of 2 quarts of barley flour to be presented on her behalf. Do not mix it with olive oil or frankincense, for it is a jealousy offering, an offering to prove whether or not she is guilty. The priest will then present her to stand trial before the Lord. He must take some holy water in a clay jar and pour it into dust he has taken from the tabernacle floor. When the priest has presented the woman before the Lord, he must unbind her hair and place in her hands the offering of proof, the jealousy offering, to determine whether her husband's suspicions are justified. The priest will stand before her holding the jar of bitter water that brings a curse to those who are guilty. The priest would then put the woman under oath and say to her, if no other man has had sex with you and you have not gone astray and defiled yourself while under your husband's authority, may you be immune from the effects of this bitter water that brings on the curse. But if you have gone astray by being unfaithful to your husband and have defiled yourself by having sex with another man, at this point the priest must put the woman under oath by saying, "May the people know that the Lord's curse is upon you when he makes you infertile, causing your womb to shrivel and your abdomen to swell. Now may this water bring the curse may this water that brings the curse enter your body and cause your abdomen to swell and your womb to shrivel." And the woman will be required to say, "Yes, let it be so." And the priest will write these curses on a piece of leather and wash them off into the bitter water. He will make the woman drink the bitter water that brings on the curse. When the water enters her body, it will cause bitter suffering if she is guilty. The priest will take the jealousy offering from the woman's hand, lift it up before the Lord, and carry it to the altar. He will take a handful of the flour as a token portion and burn it on the altar, and he will require the woman to drink the water. If she has defiled herself by being unfaithful to her husband, the water that brings on the curse will cause bitter suffering. Her abdomen will swell, and her womb will shrink, and her name will become a curse among her people. But if she has not defiled herself and is pure, then she will be unharmed and will still be able to have children. This is the ritual law for dealing with suspicion if a woman goes astray and defiles herself while under her husband's authority, or if a man becomes jealous and is suspicious that his wife has been unfaithful. The husband must present his wife before the Lord, and the priest will apply this entire ritual law to her. The husband will be innocent of any guilt in this matter, but his wife will be held accountable for her sin. So I finished reading that and I was like, well, damn. But the bit that got me was like, it felt so one-sided. Marital purity for me is not just the responsibility of my wife. Marital purity for me also involves my responsibility. I hold myself accountable for maintaining purity in our marriage. Meaning, I have no right to be unfaithful to her. But I could find no evidence of this in this text. So I started thinking, well, what is the Bible's perspective on a husband? Because, I mean, this is a whole ritual here where the woman's womb is going to shrivel up and her name will become a curse, and like, she's done out here if she's caught. It's just point blank. But shouldn't the man also be done if he's done the same? And there are texts that Genesis 2:24, Matthew 19:6, that present marriage as a covenant between one man and one woman. But then again, we know in the Bible that there are men that have multiple wives. Abraham had multiple wives, whilst those were he obviously, well, you'll hear he has his wife and then he has his concubines. But Jacob married Leah and Rachel. So he had two wives. And within a biblical context, there was no marriage certificate. There was the act of marriage. By having sex with someone, you became that person's wife. And that's why to this day, a marriage is not legal unless it's consummated. If you've never consummated the marriage, it does not legally stand, because it requires, and I guess it upholds that view that the marriage act, sex is the marriage act that legalizes a marriage. Even though we have legal papers and you might be married on paper. Anyway, going off course. The Bible, again, in Proverbs 6:25, Malachi 2:16, it calls for both men and women to be faithful to their spouse. Ephesians 5:21-33, Ephesians 5:21-23 talks about marriage being built on a foundation of mutual love and respect. The Bible speaks about men in terms of headship and leadership and their position for protecting, providing for, and cherishing their wives. Back to my thing at the beginning where I said I had to spend more time with my family and focus on them rather than focus on me in their lives, if that makes sense. Love and selflessness, again, that's servant leader, modeling the love that Christ demonstrated for the church, modeling that in our marriage. Men are called to love their wives as Christ loved the church, sacrificing ourselves for our wives' well-being. Ephesians 5:25. But in the whole Bible, there is no explicit text that outlines a test of faithfulness that results in a husband being cursed. It doesn't say anything like, may he drink the water and then his nuts will shrivel up and goodbye balls. Balls are out here. Goodbye. No more kahunas. There is no. Can you imagine that? It says, he drinks the bit of water and then, your balls will shrivel up, but your scrotum will swell to the size of a watermelon, and you will be a curse amongst the people. But you will have this swollen scrotum that you must then carry around for the rest of your life. Big melons that you must carry around for the rest of your life. Imagine if I had text like that. That would be wild. But all jokes aside, it would be warranted. It wouldn't be outrageous if it says for a woman that her womb will shrivel up and her abdomen will swell. I mean, isn't that a worthy equivalent for men that are caught to be that are found to be unfaithful? Does a woman not have the right to suspect her husband and also have a jealousy offering and perform a similar ritual? Because the Bible says that for this reason, a man shall leave his mother and father and be joined to his wife. I mean, you went looking for her. You take her away from her family and you bring her under your umbrella of covering and start this family. But, is this saying that because you're the one that went and got her and brought her into your family, you could do whatever the hell you want? I don't believe so. And if a man goes outside of his marriage, is he not defiled himself? Now, if we take cultural context at this point in time, men had multiple wives. If a man slept with a virgin, he could then go to her father and pay the bride price for her, and she would become his wife. And it says if a man takes on a second wife, he has no right to deny the first wife of her marital rights and to treat her badly. So there are scriptures that arguably say that a man can have multiple wives, but still, does that then deny the woman to the right of having faithfulness in her marriage? Does that mean that because he can go out and get another wife, it means if he does and goes and sleeps with another woman and brings her in as his wife, that's not counted as being unfaithful? I mean, I'm just asking the questions here. And, it was just something that stuck out to me. I'm not saying, so fellas, listen to me and listen to me carefully. I am not saying that this is justification for you to go out and be unfaithful in your marriage. Get that clear now. I am saying, though, that it's interesting. Now, I've met in my life and over the last few years, I've spoken to and met a lot of men that are Christian men at that. Some were pastors who have multiple wives, live a life of polygamy. I just find it interesting that, with all that I've experienced and people that I've come into contact with, that I then stumble across this text. And I've read this before. It just didn't stick out to me at the time, but it does now. I just found it interesting. And it was one of those things that made me say, why God? And these are the kind of things that I want to discuss in this segment of soul searching. Does it change my view on my faith and my Christianity? Of course not. Hell no. I just find it interesting. And I'm one of those people that just finds these things interesting, and it will make me go away and do some research. As far as I am concerned, the responsibilities of a husband still stand strong. In the way that the Bible says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loves the church. Christ says that you should have, and that love should be reciprocated. We should not go out here and love multiple, Christ has one bride, the church. Simple. So if we say Christ has one bride, then we have one bride, our wives. So to me, I ain't got room for no one else. It's me and my wife, and we rocking, and that's us. We doing our journey, we doing our thing. That's the way it goes. Love her, sacrificing myself. So sacrificing my wants and my needs, and not my needs, but sacrificing my selfish desires. And I believe going and taking another wife could be considered a selfish desire. But the Bible says that in true marriage, in true relationship, you sacrifice that for the other person. So again, that would lead me to believe that the same stands for a man. Faithfulness means forsaking all others. It's even embedded in our vows, forsaking all others. So I guess for me, I know where I stand, but I just thought I'd present the text and just share and see what I'd love to hear other people's perspectives on that. But I just find, like I said, I find it interesting that there is this ritual called out for husbands suspecting their wives, but the inverse is not there. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So we are at the end of the first podcast for season 3. I mean, it came around quick. I'm not even going to front. I'm not going to front. It came around quick. It's been a long episode, longer than I thought, longer than I expected. I guess I had more to say than I thought I actually did. But I'm glad to be back. I'm excited. Season 3 is going to be interesting. We're going to get into it. Let's get it popping. I can't wait. So what are the takeaways? Takeaways are, I'm glad to be back. I've got a new perspective. We've got a new structure. There's more focus. I'm about this. I'm dedicated to this. I want to do this, and I'm here to do this, and I hope you are here to rock with me. Takeaway number 2. My perspective, Daley perspective on the Israel-Hamas war. Perspective is, I'm on the side of life. I'm on the side of protecting innocent life. Point blank. Nothing else to be said. Point number 3. On my soul searching. Hey, listen. Whilst there is no explicit rule, let me rephrase that. Whilst there is no explicit ritual to test for marital faithfulness in men documented in the Bible, I do believe that God expects marital faithfulness from men. So men. This is a podcast that I created for us as a safe space. Whilst women are free to listen to this, I do, bring that perspective from a male perspective. I want to also hold us as males. Because of that, I want to hold us as males accountable. So, cherish your wives. Take your vows seriously. Do not disrespect the sanctity of your marriage, because your marriage is a covenant between you, your wife, and God. Nothing more to be said. And with that, I am out of here. I appreciate you rocking with me. I'm not going to drag this out. Be blessed. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Imperfectly Human podcast. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast. You can do this on your favorite streaming platforms.